The world you see and the very thoughts pinging around your skull, are they as real as they seem? What if you spent your entire life playing the game perfectly, only to find out you were playing the wrong game altogether? You've probably heard that old story that we call real is actually more like a dream or a movie. And sure, the story might seem more dramatic than Titanic could ever be, while the characters are more compelling than any Steven Spielberg movie, but the screen itself doesn't actually care. It just is. This is the story of a man who polished his character into a flawless hero, only to find out that God wasn't interested in the story he built, but rather in the screen itself. His name was Salem, and his devotion was the stuff of legends. From a young age, he had this nagging feeling that the world was a bit transient. He saw all the things that others saw as him, not as him, but as fleeting images on a backdrop of awareness. This little insight, a cornerstone of traditions like Advaita Vedanta, set him on a rather peculiar career path. He renounced everything. Food was now just fuel for him. He slept on a stone bed, which actually does wonders for your back and posture, and spent every waking moment in deep contemplation. His mind, once a mess of desires and fears, became a minimalist art gallery. He mastered ancient chants, followed every rule with breathtaking precision, gave away all his money, and even managed to love his enemies, which is, let's be honest, the spiritual equivalent of a triple axel. He was cultivating the persona of a detached observer, watching the drama of life without getting sucked into it. He was the audience, not the actor, serenely watching the play. He believed with utter conviction that he had transcended his body and his mind, and had become the pure awareness behind them. Of course, his holy reputation went viral. People came from all over just to sit near him and soak up the tranquil vibes. When he finally took his last breath, he was completely serene and at peace. He'd ticked every box on the cosmic checklist. He was certain heaven's gates would fly open. Salem's spirit drifted upwards, his soul shimmering with a century's worth of good karma. He arrived at the magnificent pearly gates, where the presence of God was sitting in simple radiance. Salem bowed, his heart swelling with what you might call humble pride. "I am here," he announced. "It's me, Salem. I spent my life in your service. I gave up the world, purified my mind, and followed every single command." God looked at him, a gaze that was neither warm nor cold, just there. And then came a single solitary word: "No." The word just hung there. Salem was floored. "No? But why? I gave you everything." "You gave me everything but the one who was doing the giving," God replied, a riddle that cut right through him. "Go back." And just like that, Salem was back on Earth. Sort of. A century passed. As he watched empires rise and fall, he thought it over. His mistake, he figured, was pride. A touch of smugness in his sainthood. So the next time he returned to the gate, he was the perfect portrait of humility. "I see my mistake. My good deeds, my holiness. They were all your grace, not my doing. I am just your humble servant." He then listed his accomplishments again, but this time framed as offerings. God's presence was unchanged. The answer was the same: no. Salem was devastated, but I didn't claim any credit. I gave it all to you. "You're still talking about the deeds," God said. "The story of the great servant is still a story about a self, Go back. Another century crawled by. Salem wrestled with this new puzzle. He saw the sneaky arrogance in his humility, the ego hiding behind his selflessness. He realized his whole holy marathon was still a race for a self. This time he was sure he had it. He returned, but this time as the sinner he believed he was. He wept. I see it now, I am a fraud. Every good deed had a shadow of pride. Every prayer had a whiff of selfishness. I don't deserve heaven. I deserve nothing. I confess everything. I am nothing. He braced himself. But the answer was just the same. No. Salem was shattered. He'd offered perfect virtue and was rejected. His deeply honest humility was also rejected. And finally his repentance was rejected as well. He had tried on every possible identity at the door, and none of them fit. He was at his wits' end. This time he just stopped. There was no reason to go back. The immense effort he had put in for centuries in his quest to be something worthy finally collapsed from sheer exhaustion. The seeker gave up trying to get into heaven, and in the same vein, trying to understand God. He simply gave up trying to be anything at all. But then, in that moment when he had surrendered completely, a new question bubbled up to the surface. Who am I? Who was this I who had been so holy? Who was this I who had been so humble? Who was this I who felt so sinful? He looked for this I, this character at the center of it all, and he couldn't find it. No matter how long or how hard he looked, all he found were thoughts. But the central character claiming them all was missing. The I was just a thought. It was the string holding all the other beads of thought together. And this was the point when the string finally snapped. The identity he had mistaken for himself was revealed to be a phantom. He started to laugh, a deep, liberating laugh that shook the dust off the centuries. This time, when he returned to the gate, he just stood there as empty awareness. God looked at him. The silence was different. It was a silence of recognition. Who are you? God asked. And for the first time, Salem spoke the plain truth. I am you. And the gate, which had never really been closed, swung open. Why did it open now? Did he pass some test? Of course not. It opened because he realized there was no Salem to be tested in the first place. The only barrier was the illusion that there was a seeker separate from what was being sought. The story of Salem is the story of the spiritual ego. It's the self that tries to achieve its own liberation, which is a bit like a shadow trying to run away from its own body. Both virtue and sin belong to this made-up identity, and enlightenment is not a reward for acing one or confessing the other. Advaita Vedanta philosophy puts it this way: you are the formless and timeless awareness in which the body and mind appear and disappear. The world is a superimposition, like mistaking a rope for a snake in a dim room. The goal is to turn on the light and see the rope. Salem spent centuries trying to perfect his snake, first making it holy, then humble, then repentant. He was liberated only when he saw it was a rope all along. The journey is about the person dissolving into the God that was already there. The kingdom of heaven isn't a place you get into, but the reality you wake up to when the fiction of the separate self falls apart. You don't have to become worthy of heaven. or some other higher place. The you that's trying so hard to be worthy is the only thing standing in the way. We all have a bit of Salem in us, constantly auditioning for some role we think will get us approved. The good person that lets everyone trample on their head, or the humble servant that has no own opinion. So, which version of Salem are you currently playing? The saint, the servant, or the sinner? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story made you laugh or at least grimace in recognition, consider subscribing for more parables that poke at these big ideas. If you feel drawn to move beyond just understanding these pointers intellectually, if you want to truly see for yourself what you already are, we've put together a structured digital retreat to help guide that deeper unfolding. It's designed to gently take you from conceptual glimpses into a more direct, lived recognition of your true nature. We use clear, straightforward guidance combined with guided meditations that invite you to rest in what's already here. You can find the full retreat linked in the description below. And if you prefer to listen without any music or background sound, we now offer audio-only versions of the newest videos. They're available exclusively on Patreon. Check the description for all the details and how to access them.